everyone, I am Chaos Wolf, and this is Ion Fury. This was developed on Build Engine, so if you've ever played games like Duke Nukem 3D, Shadow Warrior, or Blood, it's very similar to that. I have here with me one of the devs, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. I'll be commentating on Chaos Wolf. He's going to be doing the any percent run of the game, and I'm the lead level designer for the main game, and I'm also working on the expansion pack Aftershock. So I'll let Chaos Wolf take over.
Okay, so in this game we take on the role of Shelly Bombshell Harrison, and she takes down this army of cybernetic cultists. Now before we begin, I must make a disclaimer. I'm going to attempt a trick that is the largest reset point in the entire game, but luckily it is right at the beginning. I really want to show it off, and nobody can do it on their first try, so I'm going to give it a few good goes before I decide to just move on. So we go to New Game, Campaign, and timer is going to start in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, one more try. Let's make it a good one. So close. Okay, we're just moving on. If you would like to see... Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that is actually a pretty hard trick because the engine has kind of like... it's an old engine from the 90s, and the sprite collision and a lot of the collision is basically 90s code and 90s stuff happening there, so pulling that trick off is not very easy to begin with. And you can blame me for the ship, by the way. That's something I designed.
If you would like to see it done, just check out the world record. We're gonna make our safety save here, name it something appropriate, and if Oasis you would like to explain this sprite boost here.
Yeah, so what's happening there, it's a little bit hard to see because it's just one frame and you boost it up really quickly. So sprites can actually push the player away, and in many cases when the player gets pushed away, it might land in a situation where the player gets inside a wall, and when the player gets inside a wall, the game just looks for the next valid height level, and of course puts the player there conveniently, which is really useful for speedruns and bad for us developers.
So as you mentioned, this is based on old 90s code. That means, like those games in the 90s, we move diagonally as our fastest form of movement. And there is a slightly faster way to accomplish this, known as SR50, which is really a term from Doom, but the same concept applies. Basically, we lock our horizontal axis so we cannot turn, and we move, 6% faster or something like that. But
yeah, it's something like that. And Build has its own thing where, like, I think it's just how they like calculate the two movement vectors together and just kind of do a lazy calculation. The processors weren't really good at floating point math, so they kind of just do very lazy calculations, and that's how you end up with faster movements. What you see him also do quite a bit in the run is shooting the buttons, so we kind of wanted to make sure that all the buttons that seem that you can use them by pushing them, then it means that you can also shoot them. So this is something we have to actually manually define in the code for all of the buttons in the game, but luckily we designers just scripted it, so little things you have to think about to keep the game world consistent.
Nice health, by the way.
Some use. Nice. So here, another thing happens with the collision. The game also gets confused and pushes you up there. It's again a situation where you have a very weird angle and the game just pushes you inside a wall, and the game is like, whoa, what's going on? And just pushes you up or to the next valid player space, which just happens to be above you.
So one thing you may have seen me do a few times is known as reload canceling, where pressing a sequence of buttons, you can cancel out the reload animation and allow us to just continue firing. Very useful. And there's also another method that I call pump canceling, where we stop the pump animation from the shotgun and grenade launcher. and we can utilize that to devastating effect on bosses and groups of enemies.
So yeah, so while there has been a lot of like skipping going around and whatnot, the basic gameplay loop, I mean, it's the 90s first-person shooter, so it's keycard hunt and doing puzzles or light puzzle elements, which are basically just keycard replacements. So the game is split into 7 zones, and he's about to complete the first zone of the game, and the zone is kind of like a collection of maps that kind of are equal to what an episode used to be, but in this case, it's what we came up with. And of course, being a speedrun, it's gonna also do a little bit of stuff in the boss fight that isn't really 100% intended. So something we wanted to add to the games very early on was that you could actually push items, and this was something that even Doom 3D attempted in some of the earlier versions before its release. And I believe Fate also, which was an unreleased build engine game, wanted to have like pushable objects that you could jump on. This started as a joke with the office chair in the preview campaign, but then it kind of evolved, hey, why don't we have like this to be an actual mechanic in the game? So of course this is probably an amazing thing plus a nightmare for speedrunners to go around with, because now they actually have to think a little bit outside the box.
And this map here has a backtracking section that you would normally only be able to access on the other side, but by placing this cluster puck right on this spot on the wall here, we can get the little bombs that come out and clip through and hit it on the other side, opening up the way for us. Skips about the entire level, like 95% of it.
Yeah, we try to add like backtracking on all the levels. That skip is of course completely unintentional, but the engine, like when it spawns like these pellets, you kind of have to spawn them around in a random angle and random velocities and whatnot. Each of the sprites in the game always have a velocity and the angle and so on. In this case, if they happen to spawn a little bit outside of the origin sprite, then they can, in theory, clip through walls or like really, really thin seams, and in this case it was enough to kind of make them explode inside the wall instead of outside the wall. It triggers the explosion sprite on the other side of the wall and lets you through.
Looks like we're getting this on a good cycle.
Nice.
Alright, so I already explained SR50. We're now actually... I'm about to show a trick where it's required to do, or maybe not required, but it makes it like essentially free. If you know how to SR50, this window clip right in here I'm about to do, it's very easy. Just like that, we're in.
I think, I can't remember if it was a mask wall or if it was a sprite there. I think it was sprite in some of the earlier versions, but yeah, it gets removed and you have very, very narrow window of kind of like trying to clip through it before it becomes like unclippable. So it's that was one of the first tricks speedrunners discovered with the preview campaign.
And so we got quite a few long straightaways here, and that's a good spot to use SR50, get a little bit more speed. And already we're about to come up to the end of this zone.
So the first 2 zones have 5 maps, and the third zone has like a 4+1 map. And it starts going down a little bit. Some of the zones have maps that are like lengthwise quite long because they might be kind of puzzly and more slower paced, but yeah, this is the first actual boss fight you will see, because the previous one was skipped, and this one is kind of not really happening.
If you want to explain the headshot mechanic here.
Yeah, so we wanted to add actually some stuff to the build engine because well, people want headshots and whatnot, but we're still dealing with the build engine. So what we actually did is that we can only detect rectangular sprites. So we have adjusted the damage. The more up of the sprite you shoot, like if it's the top of the sprite, then it's actually gonna have like a force damage multiplier. So that's how we detect that you do headshots, even though it's just the rectangular area above the top part of it. So we adjust the damage depending on the coordinate itself. So it's a kind of a nasty trick, but it works.
What I
So
did
here-
there. Good.
Yeah, obvious sequence breaking, so sprites are something you can also clip into, even though they are kind of like flat against the wall. The sprite still kind of like acts as the top part of the sprite, despite being flat against the wall, still collides with the player, so you can use those as a platform ladder.
And there was actually a soft lock on this level. They patched it out, but then we found a alternate way into the building, and the soft lock came back. So I run this very specific route where I open that door, then go back for the switch, and then head out to the platform. Otherwise, the platform will not lower down.
Yeah, the platform has so much smoke and mirrors that we actually set it up during like the map. So right now I think the platform starts raising up when you start the map, and if you get to the platform too quickly, there's like 3 different parts that the platform consists of. So if you are too quick, it will just break the whole sequence. You cannot like re-trigger it and you're stuck. So this is familiar to those who have played the preview campaign, except that there's been a little bit of remixing, but this is another example of a map. This was designed by me, and I really wanted to have the map open and beatable in any order you kind of wanted to. And it's really cool to see like the routes that people came up with for the map overall.
Okay, and for the next trick, I'm going to make it a little safe in here. There's a monster closet that opens up in that previous area, and then there's 2 enemies here. And, okay, he survived. And now we're going to do some sorcery with this potted plant.
Yeah, so this is another instance of sprite pushing that just happened there. And you get to go through, and that's another mass wall, which are basically thin, super thin walls that are supposed to block you, but of course if you go fast enough, you can kind of go through it. So it's just basically a sector line that's blocking you. Similar to like a line def trying to block you in Doom or something similar.
Alright, and we're about to get introduced to a new enemy, known as the Wendigo. And
By Wendigo.
the ideal strategy, they're pretty dangerous. They jump out, do a lot of damage. They can slow your momentum. So with your Electrofryer, you just use your alt fire and stun them, and you can run on by. You'll see me use that quite a bit. I was the first runner to start doing that, and everybody's stuck with that strategy.
So this zone was done by yours truly, so it's probably one of the most effect-heavy one of the units as well, here and there. But yeah, you'll see some, like the ship here is also, it's actually not has 0 AI. It's just moving from like ABCD points and spawning stuff as it goes. So that's why even if you destroy it too early or get there too early, you will actually get the rocket spawning in midair, because the boss actually doesn't exist. It's just a sprite moving around carrying like a damage indicator.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And now we've got a long elevator ride that lasts about a minute. And I think now would be a good time to explain or to mention the Humble Bundle, which you can get this game and 9 others for what, like $12, and the sale is still going on for a few more days. You can get Dusk, you can get Ion Fury, you can get Head On, 3 games which I also speedrun. Then there's Dread Templar, there is Project Warlock, there is Hellbound, there's a coupon for Proteus, a coupon for Ultra Kill, and I feel like there's one more I'm forgetting. Was that 10? Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, lots of cool games by lots of awesome devs, so check it out if you love 90s first-person shooters. So here, this bit where he's actually standing right now, this whole area, if you look at it in the editor, there's actually no textures, no nothing. So what's happening here is that you're actually in a green screen area, and what I'm doing is that I'm actually moving the camera away. Instead, you're like in a train, but the train is just standing still, but I'm just moving the camera away from the player, so it looks like the train is moving and accelerating and whatnot. So anything is possible in build as long as you pump so much smoke that you cannot see more than one mirror at the same time.
And the same effect is going to be used here on this level.
Yeah, this is also something, it's not my zone, but I came up with the effect here as well. So usually I come up with the effects, I do a prototype, and then I complain to our coder that why can't I do it this way, and you did this effect to do this, but I want to do these instead, and I frustrate the coder, and after a while we end up with a new effect that nobody had in mind, and it's doing something insanely stupid. But this is like one of the things where we're kind of having green screen around and just projecting like a moving camera that was intended for skyboxes, like 1:8 scale skyboxes, and it ended up being like a camera for a train run instead. So that's just one example of things how we were trying to push the engine when we made the game. So this is like one of the first levels, I would say, where you do like more corridors, more backtracking, and a little bit less open, I would say, compared to the previous ones. It's a kind of a bit of a break from the previous map, so this kind of starts the train section campaign, whatnot. Really, really cool zone as well.
Oh, he still managed to hit me. I got him at the wrong angle. There we go. All right, this door right here. If we look through this tiny little gap and hold down E, we can frame perfect activate to that as soon as we have even 1 pixel line of sight with that button on the other side.
Yeah, so the engine basically has like the crosshair acts as a kind of like a search thing. So there's like a search function, and it basically kind of like hit scan or search function, and whatever is on the hits the crosshair is okay, even if it's like a 1 pixel like a seam or anything like that. So you can abuse that to your advantage in some cases.
Oh, he jumped up really early.
Yeah.
We don't stun that Wendigo. We just go ahead and kill him because he will not remain still long enough for us to get through that door.
So the taser is, after you've seen, it's kind of a useful tool. We actually made it even more useful in the newest patch, where you can hold it indefinitely. So you just hold the right mouse button and it will kind of like tase forever, kind of like the chainsaw in Doom in a sense. But it's very useful for stunning enemies and just like dealing damage as well.
Oops. Oh, he gave me a pass. Okay, we get another backtracking section we're about to exploit. This was discovered by Finnish speedrunner Draku, and still to this day we use it. Except we have a little bit of a earlier setup with it as we climb up that ladder.
That's very similar to what we had earlier in the Zone 2 Map 1, where we blew the wall from the other side. So it's basically the tiny pellets from the cluster bomb just spawn inside the wall, and they kind of get placed in random directions. So if you kind of dump the map at the same frame it explodes, you can kind of see that they're kind of like stuck inside a void. Of course, the heat detection and whatnot is not going to behave as it should.
Now, coming up on the level right after this one is a deceptively tricky skip. It looks easy, but it's really not. The reason being is because it requires about 5 inputs to do and a very precise setup. Also, this wall blows up on the next level, but it doesn't hurt the player, so you can just hug it and go through as soon as you can.
Yeah, that's one big difference we had to other Build Engine games, is that we actually had purposely did explosion sprites that can only do audio, only do damage, only do visuals, or do them all, or whatever combination or damage multipliers. So we can actually have visual explosions. That was a very big frustration. Nice. That's a very difficult jump. So what he did there as well, and using slopes in the engine and jumping is actually very hard in the engine, because the slopes are kind of like an afterthought. They were added within, like, I would say, Duke Nukem was released January 96, and they added like August 95, so they were like 3 months, 4 months old when they were added to a commercial product. So the collision code is kind of what it is. includes jumping and whatnot.
What you saw me do there in the water with the electrifier, that is intended. I'm not like bored out of my mind and just swinging a weapon for no reason. It actually is speed tech. You move twice as fast underwater when you're using the electrifier.
I mean, you're swimming, technically.
And then now we jump off that spider drone, off the broom. We do another one of those ledge pushes.
So yeah, there's a bit of power-ups. What you saw him do earlier is get the jump boots, which basically enables double jump for the player. And yeah, allows you to jump higher.
Now we're coming up to the end of this zone. We got a boss fight to deal with. There are actually 2 bosses, and the idea for this is to get them to line up. I start with a grenade launcher to clear out some boxes in the way, and then I switch to the ion bow once again.
Trivia, the moving elevator on the previous map is actually a sliding door. So you're actually standing in a sliding door.
There we go.
So, yeah, the crossbow has like the, as you've seen, like the overcharge mode, which does insane damage. I think in 2.0 we kind of toned it down a little bit because still kept it fair, but toned it down a little bit to make it a little bit less potent, so it would require like 2 overcharges or something like that. But yeah, it's insane. It's pretty much the BFG of this game.
Yeah, the bow FG is some people have called it.
Yeah.
Now this trick, this is where I'm gonna really need to focus. It's one of the hardest tricks in the game. First I clear them out, then I come up to my spots. There we go, second try, we'll take that.
That's nice. Yeah. So yeah, what you saw was a grenade jump, and just like anything else, the grenade is a sprite that has clipping capabilities, so naturally, like any good clipping sprite, you can jump on top of it and use it as a platform. And there's a bit of mechanics like that where we kind of saw them, and some of these are kind of intentional as well. But it doesn't mean that it's easy. Like the nade jumps are kind of unpredictable and challenging to do.
Yeah. And now coming up as a trick I actually discovered by accident, if you would like to explain the sector over sector.
Yeah, so build engine, like one of the big features that's like not super well advertised perhaps is kind of like the sector over sector thing. So build engine is non-Euclidean, like you can do, it's portal based and you can kind of have like sectors overlap each other. So let's say you have a room, you go around a donut and you come back and you're actually in a room that's overlapping the previous room, but they're actually like 2 different universes in a sense. So that's how you can create overlapping areas, like like the stairs in the cinema map and whatnot. But in many cases, like we have a setup where we have a pipe that's drained and pipe that is full of like sewage. You have to do a puzzle to end up here. They just happen to occupy the same XYZ coordinates. And like has happened previously, you can go inside the wall. So this is kind of like a stage 2 thing, what you can do. So instead of putting you on a higher platform, in this case it gets confused, like where am I even supposed to put the player, and it just picks, okay, this looks like a valid spot, and in this case the underwater sector has higher priority because it happens to be the higher sector number once it starts searching desperately where to put the player. So it just puts the player there, and conveniently it's the exact same shape and everything, but it's just underwater. That's exactly where you need to go. So another case of swapping mirrors.
Because I found it, naturally I got to name it. And due to the nature of it, swimming through a tunnel full of sewage, and the fact that you kind of rely on the unpredictable nature of that spider drone that we boost off of, I called it the crapshoot.
Appropriate name for it. Yeah, so the enemy basically pushes you because of damage, much like the trash bags and everything, but in this case the enemy is going to do extra damage and push you back a little bit, and when the enemy is jumping as well, that also helps to kind of push you a little bit too far. So coming up is the section that is probably familiar to those who play the Haskell's House of Horrors, which was kind of like the early preview campaign thing we also released. Not much has changed on that, in case you have played that but not gone this far in the full game. Basically, I think we changed the puzzle a tiny bit just to make it a little bit more difficult and challenging, because the area itself was very well detailed by that. So,
I'm sorry, what puzzle?
yeah. You solved it. Congrats. You're fast. You're really fast. Yeah, so that's another instance of just like glitching through stuff and doing things. Its build engine is like the Jank Engine 3000. There's a lot of cool things you can do with the build engine, but it's like so much maintenance work as well to do these kind of things. So this is also like one of the instances where I think we changed the upper area a bit, but there's like these drones used to be like in a skybox, and we actually would show that the drones are approaching, and then we would actually teleport the drone to the player area. So it looked like a seamless, continuous movement that they were actually outside and flying inside. But of course the exterior, because this is not a true 3D engine, so the drones can actually never exist there. So we basically just show a green screen's projection of something happening on the other side of the map, and then just teleport the drone, so there's like a tiny stutter, but it's barely visible.
Yeah, this auto-scroller section was inspired by games like Gex 3D, and there's also a second or third episode of Quake 1 that has this descending floor, and this is just them attempting to have a similar effect.
Yeah, again, because you cannot have overlapping areas, it poses interesting challenges, so that's why you have kind of like these monster closets scattered around at different heights, and then you have the lower part, which is kind of like a crevice inside the wall, and you have to go there, so just to hide the fact that it's not 3D. Here we go towards like the penultimate zone, which is going to be the Haskell's lab. And yeah, it's just like a bunch of machinery, nuke engine stuff, like what a typical laboratory has. But in Mad Men, I insisted that we have those lights go on. There it goes down.
Bad cycle right there.
You can blame me, the underwater section was something I did for the preview campaign.
So we headshot that Wendigo, and then, whoa, very quick. We don't know why that trick right there works. We just run into we look for a specific pixel, and then just run ourselves into the wall, and we clip up.
Yeah, it's just build engine. Like, a lot of the times you find these, like, beta testers find bugs and skips and whatnot, and we're just patching them as best as we can. Yeah, but a lot of the times it's unintentional stuff that we really don't. If it makes player get like soft lock or force damage or anything like that, we remove it. But if it's something that's like, okay, you found it, congratulations, then we're just gonna keep it there.
So for the key card skip, we line ourselves up and crouch down, and then upon standing, we get our hitbox to just barely able to touch the key card through the glass. That's one of my favorite tricks.
Yeah, every object in the game has like a retrieve distance, so the whole game script is done in the conscript COM. So that's what Duke 3D used as well, but here we have like extended over the years and made even more and more stuff moddable, but still it runs on a virtual machine that was basically coded in the 90s. And it comes with a lot of quirks as well that belong to the thing, including like the retrieve distance for the keycards and whatnot. And this is probably something that a lot of people hate.
Yeah. All of us in the community really wanted to find a skip for this level, but it's too solid. It's just, we pretty much play it as intended. But there is a timing and rhythm to that revolving door puzzle. And yeah, I was able to get it at ESA, but didn't quite get it that time. I think I've lost my touch for it.
You could just always blame Marathon Luck for everything. So
Yeah.
it's fine.
Stay back. And I'll point out a couple of places where we did a lot of investigating, like trying to find a way through this window into this room or through that door over there, but nothing worked. The map is just too solid.
Yeah,
So,
some things are like that. Yeah, this is like one of the first zones where we kind of wanted to go almost completely non-linear, so this is also something that some people got stuck a little bit in. But we figured out that, okay, this is like the final zone and we have the zone system, so let's like have two maps combined in a way that it's like a back and forth between like two whole maps, so it's kind of like a one really large map that's just like technically split into two maps, but they still are like very reliant on each other in terms of progression.
yeah, and this is an area we actually come back to, but there's a laser grid that we cannot pass through. Well, I say that. We can, but we just don't survive it. And it only worked on an old patch. Right here, we're gonna drop down this elevator shaft. If I hold E, I can frame perfect activate the switch.
So this is kind of the mini boss fight of the zone. It doesn't really have like a real boss fight in the zone, so you have these two mini mechs that were kind of purpose-fit for this level, and then a bit of brutes and whatnot, but it's kind of like a final climax of the zone in a sense. And I believe I ended up doing like all the elevators for these maps. I was pretty much the only one who could do like the stupid sequences needed for the door operation and everything.
Yeah, and that's zone 6 down. We got just one left, and it only has 2 maps, so we're about done here.
Yeah. So the Zone 7, the first map, it doesn't really have any secrets tagged, but there's actually a couple of secrets that are in the map. Well, like 2, at least 3, that are kind of hidden. So one of them is more of an Easter egg, and yeah, it's kind of a very linear map, intentionally, kind of like a gauntlet of different bosses and different challenges and whatnot, and kind of all out in terms of detail and stupid gimmicks that you can add to the map and whatnot. So being a map made by me, there's some more green screen stuff and whatnot introduced as well.
There we go, we got the one charge. A kill with one charge.
So this section here is kind of a tribute to Duke 3D Dark Side in the episode 2 map. It's one of my favorite maps in Duke 3D, just wanted to make a tribute. It's really inspiring.
Okay, now I'm gonna do a quick save right here because there's a small chance that I could soft lock depending on what happens with the 2 mechs that appear.
So there were a bit of bugs with the mech AI where they can kind of go into a sleep state, which is not cool, and that causes like the whole AI detecting if it's being hit or not kind of bug out and so on. So that's the main reason. It's actually fixed in 2.0, but this is done 0.1.
Alright, this is the final boss. I have to warn you, this part gets loud because normally we fight it in phases, but we're gonna get ourselves on top of that dome, get ourselves stuck, and just pump cancel grenades into the dome. Like, very short work of him, and all of his dialogue is gonna happen at once.
Yeah, being an 90s game, it has a 90s sound system actually called Apogee Sound System. Yeah, the name is a little bit interesting.
Get ready on time.
Oh yeah.
And that's time. So yeah, that was Ion Fury. If you enjoyed this game, we do have a build engine community. If you go to speedrun.com/if, you will find the Discord link there, and that covers this game. That covers Duke, Blood, Shadow Warrior, Redneck Rampage, the new Power Slave Exhumed. And yeah, Oasis, if you would like to take a moment to mention Aftershock.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly mentioning that Aftershock is currently being developed, and it's gonna be pretty cool. More green screen, more stuff, weapons, enemies, and whatnot. And I really hope to see what the speedrunning community makes out of it.
Yeah, and if you enjoy what you saw here, I do a lot of FPS game speedrunning. If you want to come over and check me out at twitch.tv/chaos_wolf. Yeah, I want to thank Oasis, first of all, for once again commentating for me. You can see him right there. That's Max and Level Design on the credits here. And thanks to Shots Fired. This has been my first time here, and I really enjoyed it. And that's all I've got.
Thank you very much. Let's enjoy some more upcoming runs and enjoy them.